Hello, Facebook fans and YouTube fans of DX Engineering. It is Thursday afternoon here in the Eastern time zone of the U.S. It is 1830 Zulu on September 5th, 2024, and this is the Manufacturer Showcase brought to you by DX Engineering. And this is a show where we talk to our over 170 different manufacturers that we represent here at DX Engineering. And today we're going to talk about DX Engineering. We have a special guest. It's Rod, K8RR. Hello, Rod.
Hi, Tim. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Rod, let's talk about some of the really interesting products that we have here at DX Engineering, known as isolators, line isolators. Why don't you give kind of an overview of the our line isolator products?
Sure. The whole thing starts with the need to suppress RF interference and also to prevent interference from coming out from devices onto lines that would get into our receivers and cause problems for low signal level work. You know, where you're trying to do DXing, you're trying to get the most out of your receive antenna or your transmit antenna. You're trying to hear things really well, and we're trying to get rid of noise and prevent noise from coming into various parts of the system. So uh, isolators can typically, well, they're typically ferrites on different types of cable, wires, coax, and in in one case, of course, we have the DX Engineering ISO Plus isolators for the Ethernet cables. And then we also have chokes for receive antenna lines and chokes for transmitting lines. And the one that we have up on the screen now is the new DX Engineering high common mode impedance receive feedline choke. That's a kind of a great new product for hams who have receive antenna systems. This is what you do, what the with your feed line to make sure that noise and unwanted signals are not going to get into your receive antenna system. And this is a great new product with the F connectors for 75 ohm, typically an RG6U feed line. Uh, of course, it would work on a long run of RG11U feed line that has the appropriate F connectors. And
Right. So
this is just a great choke for receiving to make sure none of that noise gets in from the outside of the shield of the coax.
Right. So, Rod, where we have our active receive antennas, a lot of guys have just the one active vertical, right? That they use for maybe it's an SDR, maybe it's a receive only application, maybe it's part of a three element, four element, eight circle array. But all those feed lines that are going to these receive antennas, the shields can be antennas, and you don't want that.
That's right. That's right. And so you could use this choke, the DXE RXFC 75 on each individual antenna feed line because they are a DC pass, and they're sealed and they have no no way for any moisture to get in, so they can be used outside. I like using dielectric grease on the connectors just to make sure that no moisture gets into the connectors, and and you could see on the write up on our web there for this particular item that these receive common mode chokes have incredible impedance, starting with even as low as 100 kilohertz with over 1,000 ohms and rising quickly 2,500 ohms at 200 kilohertz, and then where it really matters to hams, 8,000 ohms of common mode impedance at 160 meters, 10,000 at 80 meters, and 8,000 at or over 8,000 at 40 meters. So these are specifically designed to be great low band receive chokes, and they're used at the typically uh, at the at the shack end of a main feed line. If you're only going to put one of them in a line, it would go at the shack end of the feed line, but external to any lightning protection grounding that you have. So then that entire line, that entire run of long coax, sometimes it's only lying on the ground, sometimes it's supported above ground along a fence line. That entire line is going to be killed as far as getting any of that noise that collects on the outside of that coax into the station. And then, of course, at the other end, you could use one at the receive antenna or at the array, and make sure that none of that gets into that system as well.
Right. So this can provide many dB of attenuation of outside noise in the case where you have noise riding on the shield. And that does happen in some of these high impedance receive systems. There can be noise riding on the shield. And I have had the best results here at K3LR with putting a common mode choke such as what we were just showing on both the antenna side, right where the preamp is, or the buffer amplifier, and then also here in the shack. And in the cases of an 8 circle or 4 square or a 3 element array rod, using on both ends of the RG6. So at the buffer amplifier and then at the combiner end.
Yeah, that would be like the ultimate of isolation, would be to get those chokes at each end of each antenna line, and then at for sure at the shack end of the main run back, to make sure that none of that noise is getting into the station.
Right. And in the documentation, we show, Parky shows you some applications of where you can put the various chokes. And I think it makes a big difference. It really does. I've had receive systems, and I know you have talked to a lot of customers about that.
That's right. That's right. There's it's kind of, noise is an insidious thing, and you don't really know if you have it. There are going to be cases where somebody could install one of these chokes and they don't hear the difference on a particular day, but you don't know when some noise is going to propagate in and affect the system, basically raising the noise floor of the entire receive system. And it just kind of happens gradually as the sun sets and the noise starts coming in. Well, the propagated noise that could be coming from 2 miles away or 20 miles away it could get into your antenna. You could deal with that in some respects with filtering, but as far as this choke goes, it takes away any of the noise that would be coming on to the outside of the feed line. In a lot of cases, these are very long feed lines, so that, because they respond to long wavelengths noise that is common on low bands. This is a great way to cut that out.
Right.
It's just one more way of getting the best that you can get out of your fantastic transceivers.
Right. And we want transmission lines and feed lines to be just that, not antennas. We don't want them
That's
to be, adding noise or other outside signals. In the case of, a broadcast station that is has permeated through the shield, that's the kind of thing that there really can be trouble with. Pat is on here in the chat room, Kilo 7 Lima Norway Papa, and he said, would like to incorporate these with my NCC2 and the antennas. And Pat, that is a great idea. Again, to provide all the isolation possible to keep the shield being a shield, and Rod, keeping the noise off the shield.
Yeah, it's a key ingredient to a really low noise receive system. These receive chokes are now very affordable, so you can have them in multiple positions in the system, and it's not going to break the bank.
Right. And Rod, our friend November Alpha 5 Charlie, Steve is on here, and he says, thank you for the help with my high impedance AVA buffer amplifiers. And, Steve went through some lightning hits with his
Mm,
AVA 3s. And Rod, you want to talk about what normally happens when you take maybe some nearby lightning with the buffer amplifiers?
right, right. In most cases, the the action of turning off the power can disconnect the unit from the whip. Uh, in some cases, it's an 8.5 footer. In other cases, people are using taller whips. In the case of the AVA3, it now takes it to ground through a resistor, and it can help save the system. But there are those who just leave it on all the time because perhaps it's a skimmer or some other type of application, not necessarily on an array, but even on just a single receive antenna. The DXE RSEAV1, I call it the receive antenna, right? It's kind of a little tricky uh, mnemonic device. So the receive short element active vertical is what that all stands for, and so that is the whip and the insulator plate and the AVA3, and sometimes even when they're turned off, there's going to be a really bad lightning pulse, and the circuit can take a little bit of a pulse, and those are uh, typically repairable. I mean, there are very seldom direct hits onto receive antennas because these are short element antennas that are only 8.5 to 24 foot tall, and so you're not going to have an issue there. But since these are out in the wild, out in the clear, and they could be maybe 100 feet, a couple 100 feet away from a tree or a tower that takes a strike, the receive short active and the AVA3 can take a pulse, and for that matter, the pulse could even be coming in on the feed line. the the choke could help cut that down. There's the new single receive antenna, and then of course a pair of these are used on an NCC2, and more, of course, are used on the various arrays, and they do a really nice job. They're reinforced now. They have a little more protection in them than the older AVA2s and the older high Z element amplifiers.
Right, right. But hey, we're getting towards that season, Rod, where 80 meters and 160 meters, at least in the northern hemisphere, will get quieter and won't have as much static and as much storm. So I know guys are thinking about, the eight circle, the four square, and we want to make sure that they have good receiving systems going into the low band season here, even with all the sunspots going on and the excitement up on 15 and 10 meters. And, Rod, they're even talking about F2 propagation to Europe on 6 meters here this winter.
There's a lot of buzz about the high bands and about this sunspot cycle peak that makes things really hop on the high bands, high HF and into VHF 6 meters, and it's very exciting. And so then that means that 160 and 80 aren't quite as good as they might otherwise be during a sunspot minimum. But that doesn't mean that there isn't good propagation at certain times of the fall and the winter, and so we need to be ready for anything, right?
That's right.
That's
Well,
I I was like, I can never have enough antennas, right?
Right. This really dovetails into On All Bands, our DX Engineering blog, onallbands.com. Go check it out if you haven't. Every day we're loading new articles to On All Bands. You see the moniker up there in the upper right hand corner now. Onallbands.com is a great place to find out all sorts of information on various aspects of the amateur radio hobby. And if you're not a customer of DX Engineering, give us a shot. Send Rod an email, dxengineering@dxengineering.com. Place an order. I think you're going to be very, very happy with how quickly you get your order. And if you have any questions, we have the best guys like K8RR on the team. What do you think, Rod?
A whole team of dedicated hams with hundreds upon hundreds of years of experience. This year, I'm celebrating being a ham for 50 years. I can't even believe it. I mean, like, where did all that time go? But yeah, 50 years and over 30 in the business. It's just amazing
Right. And all that
how much
experience.
collective information is available to our customers from our sales techs and tech support guys.
Yeah, it's just tremendous. Well, Rod, thanks so much for coming on today with us to talk about some of the new isolation chokes and talking about our new AVA3, which is the cornerstone of our buffer amplifier series. It's even better, and hopefully everybody will have a really good season here coming up. Lots of DXpeditions going on, and if we can help you, DX Engineering is here to help you enjoy the best hobby in the world. Until tomorrow, when we have on another special guest for the weekend special, 73 from DX Engineering.